Welcome to the Revenue Cafe. The Revenue Cafe podcast is brought to you by Breadcrumbs, the revenue acceleration platform. In each episode, we will bring you interesting conversations on all things sales, marketing, and CX related. The hope is we will help you along the path to revenue acceleration and entertain you along the way.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining another session. We're continuing our conversation around the challenges related to COVID and the crazy year that was 2020 and what it looks like in 2021. We have Esti Zimmerman with us from Akkadian Labs, a cool homegrown company that offers solutions to help in this work from home environment. We're going to be chatting about some of these challenges and just tips in general around sales and go-to-market. Esti, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, I'm very excited to be here. I was eager to see the opportunity come through.
Awesome. As always, we have Joe Eicher on the call as well. He'll be jumping in and out of the conversation with some of his keen insights into all things sales as well. Esti, I think it's probably best to start with like a little introduction. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Akkadian, just so we're all on the same page.
Definitely, yes. So my name is Esti, as you mentioned. I'm the sales operations manager at Akkadian Labs. I've actually been there for just 6 months. I was hired during the pandemic, and I am remote out of Minnesota. Our company's headquartered out of New York. So I think that alone highlights how, companies are looking at talent differently. I believe I also got this job with my brand that I call myself the gifted generalist. I can do a little bit of everything, which is what my job is at Akkadian. It's not just sales ops. I'd say a little do marketing ops, a little bit of sales enablement, definitely partnering with finance a lot. So a little bit of everything. And then Akkadian, I will say the culture is amazing. It's a homegrown company, as you mentioned. We've been around for about 6 years, and we primarily focus on the Cisco unified communication space. So we provide software that streamline communications and provisioning and anything that is to do with unified communications.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Esti, I guess it's probably best if we start kind of just with the big topic, right? Which is, 2020 was a little bit of a bonkers year. COVID took the world by surprise and forced people to make all kinds of changes and pivot very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, what do you think has been the biggest challenge or the biggest change due to the circumstances from last year?
Yeah, I would say for our company, just like other companies, we had to transition to work from home. So I think that has been a challenge, but we were lucky because we utilize the software at our company. So we were able to pivot relatively easily to that environment. And then I know a lot of businesses have been struggling to get leads and that sort of thing, but because of what we offer to our clients and we were able to maintain our current customer base, and they actually bought more of our provisioning software, some of our console software. And so we actually were able to fare pretty well, which is really great. But I would say the biggest thing for us too is that in this work from home environment, all the live events that we rely on for most of our leads were canceled. And so we're actually seeing that even right now in our Q1 here, it's been challenging to get to those touch points without that human interaction. So that's definitely a continued focus that we're working on about how do we make sure we're getting to our leads in the right way. So
yeah,
that's what we had. Yeah.
Super interesting. There's actually kind of two parts to that I'd love to dig into a little bit further. The first part, given what you guys do, what you sell, were you already well positioned for a work from home situation? Were you guys already doing that kind of, or was it like a hard pivot like some businesses?
I wouldn't say it was a hard pivot at all. We were able to do it. I would say, like I mentioned, I was hired during the pandemic, and so I was, I never started a job remotely, but it went really well. Mm-hmm. So that was easy. So we were well positioned, but I will say our culture was definitely one of an office culture based on what I know. And so I think it's been hard. We actually, over half our sales team is new. So I think also just getting everyone onboarded and everything has been challenging because you don't have that face-to-face interaction of, hey, let's go into the war room quick and do that. So,
right.
Our technology enabled us to be well positioned, but we've definitely had our growing pains with this new world.
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
you think that biggest challenge is that, spontaneous communication, like turning your chair around, just having a chat?
Yes.
Okay.
I would definitely say that, because I would also say with the space we're in, it takes a long time to learn all the nuances of unified communications. I mean, we're so fortunate that our VP of sales came from Cisco. She has a great background. So our leaders know that space really well. It's just, we also have quite a few new reps. And I will say it's just been the past year or two that we've really adopted our CRM process and developed one. That's one of my big initiatives. So without prior process with our CRM, there's no data or history to understand the history of accounts.
Sure.
As people inherit this, it's just kind of been a little bit of a hodgepodge. And so for people to just reach out and say, I mean, I think they do, our team does a great job to the extent that they can, but I think we're finding like they don't always necessarily, it's harder to just like ping someone and feel comfortable doing that if you don't know the culture.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, you guys are on Salesforce or HubSpot or what?
We're on good old Sugar.
Sugar CRM. Okay.
Yeah, Sugar CRM. Yeah. So we had a sales director who was hired just over a little bit a year ago. So he came in and he's definitely, so prior to me, was starting to put a process in place for understanding, like, you need to log activities, log meetings, demos, close opportunities. So basically, we just are now getting good history in our database to be able to look at trends. And so that's kind of where I come into and understand. Actually, my background is in finance. So I made a career switch. I worked at General Mills as a finance manager for 8 years prior to this. So I'm an analytical person as well as a salesperson. I will say my blood, I bleed sales in my DNA. My parents are both hard salespeople. But yeah, so I think it's just been hard to get that adoption of CRM too.
Right.
And people don't love Sugar necessarily.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Cool. That's interesting. The second part of what you were mentioning was kind of the reliance on live events, face-to-face type of lead gen opportunities. How have you guys adjusted? Have you embraced the virtual event world? Have you gone more digital? Are you spending more on paid ads? Like how has the business kind of adapted to that?
Yeah, so we've had webinars. So something that we rely on heavily for our business is partners. So a big strategy for us is expanding our partner network and our enterprise. So we have enterprise and partners. So we've had webinars for partners and webinars for our enterprise accounts. So that's one way, and we get really great attendance actually. So those have been super successful. We have had them about once a quarter. And what I'd say is what I'm doing with our BD and marketing is really evaluating our tech stack as well. So we use Zoom Info to really get good leads as well. And so something that I've recently thought of, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. Like I'm a podcast junkie. So there's a bunch of sales ops podcasts and whatnot that I listen to. So I learned on one that I guess, people are, to get to the right person faster, more people are calling cell phones. And we currently didn't have any cell phone data for our contacts. So that's something that we're working on integrating because we need to get to the right people at the right level faster, and just having their home phone or whatever phone is in Zoom Info isn't getting us what we need. So that's something we've been evaluating.
Cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you guys have made like a bunch of kind of tactical level pivots. I think that's consistent across the board. I don't know if you know, but like Breadcrumbs was actually founded as COVID became a reality. So we've only known business in the COVID era. So for us, it's our reality. But the tactical seems consistently true. I'm wondering about strategically, or in terms of like overall goals and planning. Have you guys had to, rethink your strategy, rethink your goals? Is it, are you staying the course but just pivoting the tactics to support? How are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I would say, like I mentioned before, I would say we're pretty much staying the course, but changing the tactics a little bit to adapt. So like I mentioned, we're really fortunate because our software is needed for companies to be able to work from home. So one of our big strategies then is expanding our current client base, customer base, and then, as I mentioned, really expanding our current partner enterprise network. So with our partnerships, we really want to strengthen those and really leverage the extent we can, because they help us get to our customers faster, right? So we have partners who then bring us leads and generations that. So that has been a big strategy that we haven't been as focused on in the past. That's one area. And then the other big thing is just continuing innovation with our products too, our different offerings, as we are finding new learnings in terms of what works. As Teams is becoming a big thing. Can our software, can we develop any sort of software around that? So I wouldn't say that we've had to change drastically, because to be honest, 2020, we actually did pretty well. We were able to basically hold flat or grow a little bit in terms of our whole business. So like I said, our space, we've been fortunate, unlike I know some other industries like hospitality, retail, that sort of thing. But it's super interesting for your business that you came about during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's it was not planned, obviously.
Yeah.
The genesis of our business actually lies in a bunch of like serendipitous moments. That kind of started fall of 2019. And just the pieces started falling together really well in terms of, our founding team and like the product vision and the strategy. Just unfortunately, simultaneously, COVID was evolving, right?
Yeah.
The good news is, unlike some of these industries that you're mentioning, and rightfully so, travel and tourism has had a rough time. Anything related to hospitality, really. Tech has, for the most part, been insulated, or so it seems, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, we only really had one way to go. We were starting from zero, so growth was the only option, right? And and so we've been lucky. Like it's gone really, really well. We got from idea to proof of concept, in a matter of months. Proof of concept to MVP a few months later. MVP to fairly stable product and in a position to sell a few months after that. And now we're really off to the races, right? So, the biggest difference for us has been similar to you guys, not so much from a lead gen perspective, but, a big part of my life and my co-founders has been these events, right? Either as representatives of the businesses that we're with, or, networking as part of our, side hustles, for a lack of a better term, or just maintaining relationships. And those evaporated. Yeah, so that's been a big adjustment. In one way, it's been kind of a blessing as we're founding a business, because those things are distractions and they take a lot of time, between the travel and the time of the conference and, all that stuff. You're losing days. But on the flip side, you miss that face-to-face interaction, the maintaining the relationships, the building of your network, like all of that stuff goes away, right? And there's not directly measurable benefits from those interactions, in my opinion, right?
That's true. Yeah, I mean, that's really true. And I think it's hard because it was part of our culture and part of the space too. And yeah, so for our lead gen, it has been a challenge without those big events, because it is for us a lot about networking, and getting to those partners and finding the right people. So yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. I think we'll fare okay. We'll be fine. I mean, like I said, we created new positions during the pandemic, so that's the good thing, And I guess to answer your question earlier about, what are our tactics? Yeah, our tactics are changing. Hire a sales ops manager. That didn't exist before.
Right.
Because we need more data, we need more insights to understand, okay, what is our touch rate? Well, touch points, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And like I said, overhaul our sales team, pretty much, and really, really get some really good hard hitters in there. So, I would say it was just kind of, it's not, I wouldn't recommend it necessarily to hire all new sales reps at one time.
Sure. Yeah.
Definitely not. Given and hire sales ops too when there's little onboarding to begin with, as well as maybe you're changing product and pricing and all of that at one time, and you're used to a stable status quo.
Right.
For our leaders, that has been a little bit of a jolt as well.
Yeah, for sure.
We did this to ourselves.
Yeah, I'd love to dig into that a little bit, and maybe it ties into this kind of next topic, which is, so it sounds like the strategy is like sound, solid, not hugely impacted by COVID, actually probably like helped out by COVID.
Mhm.
And you guys have figured out some of the tactics. So
Mhm.
what does that leave you with in terms of priorities for 2021? Either like, corporate business level objectives,
Mhm.
or like you in terms of your role and sales ops, right? It sounds like getting the reps using sugar properly is probably like number one.
That is number one. So I will take your question in two parts. So in terms of company priorities, I would say we're really focusing on the year of the cloud. So Gartner's report came out. I don't know if you read any Gartner reports. Like I said, I'm a podcast junkie. Basically, I just love information. I love learning. So I read everything. So Gartner, has dubbed this the year of the cloud. And so we're really focusing on technologies that enable migration to the cloud. So I think large enterprises will most likely start migrating there. It won't be overnight. So we're making sure that we're coming along for the ride on that and making sure we're leading that fight too. So not just coming along, I misspoke. We're trying to, make sure we're ahead of it. And so that way we don't get left behind. So that's a big corporate initiative and corporate strategy, I would say. Like I mentioned, expanding our enterprise client base, and then strengthening our strategic partnerships. So at the enterprise level, we've been successful with smaller accounts. So we're really trying now to get to some larger accounts and maybe expand industries into healthcare and education a little bit more. Those are two big ones right now for us in the remote world. And then for me, like you said, yes, in my role as sales ops, really ensuring integrity of our CRM data, because a reason I was hired, I would say another trend we're seeing is, data is king. All these data rev ops companies and whatnot are popping up. And so we want to make sure we're making informed decisions when we go after deals and understand trends and forecasts. But if you don't have good data, you can't do any of that. So I've learned that from my finance days for sure. Bad data in is not good out. You can't make any sense of it. So yeah, so getting people to track, and the biggest pushback I hear from AEs is that, oh, it just takes too much time. This is wasted time. But I think it's really understanding, we need to do this because we need to understand what deals you're working and when we need our CPO, our leaders, chief leaders to step in and help strategize. Because at a small company, we don't have layers. We're not a flat organization. So our AE strategize with our VP of sales, right? That's just how we work. And so, yeah, that has been a big thing, is just really ensuring people are logging activities so we can understand where the deals are at easily. It's like very basic for us right now.
For sure.
Hey, Esti, I had a question for you too on that. So I've managed sales teams and also sat between marketing and sales and dealt with all the data problems. For a priority change like that, like how are some of the tactics you use with the sales team to help them clean up their CRM data, and also maybe some of the ways you help push your priorities up to leadership above you, knowing that you're the person responsible for kind of interpreting all of that CRM data and additional data come in?
Yeah, good question. So I'll answer your second one first. So in terms of priorities, I will say it's a priority of our leaders to get our data cleaned up and get our dashboard. So we have the key insights. So I actually report to our president. So he's all about the dashboards, having understanding of where we're at for the quarter. And he's also the VP of our overall parent company, so of finance. So that has been helpful. So I don't necessarily have to push it because it's already being pushed. And then I just have to keep pushing it further. And I'm really fortunate that our sales director also, this is a big initiative and priority for him to get it in. So I think that has been helpful. It's just now, I think, really showing that I think the more important question to answer is, okay, what are my strategies for actually getting people to do it? And I will say so we've actually made it so not only do they have a quota, in terms of sales quota, there's activity quota that you have to hit, so that's part of the performance appraisal process of like, this is what is required.
Yeah. Is there a lot of pushback or resistance to those sorts of changes, or do the reps and all them see the benefit and have started kind of reaping the rewards of it?
I think people have seen the benefit. So it's a mixed bag. I will say the two senior reps on our team who have been there the longest, so they're not new. They've been with the Akkadian probably 5 years. And we're a 6-year-old company. So for a while, they actually do a really good job of it and see the benefit. And one of our newer AEs came from the Salesforce world. So she also is very diligent about note taking and everything and entering activities. And I don't mean to be gender biased or anything, but it's the women who are doing it really well. And getting in there. Just have some two guys on our team who aren't necessarily the most organized for all of that, and they're selling though. I know they're selling. Like they are, they're hitting their quotas. They're doing what they need to do. It's just getting it. So, there's not a lot of pushback. It's just, oh yeah, I got to do that. I literally said, do we need to have a session every Friday where we sit down, virtually, and we have a glass of wine or beer, whatever you want, and we just get this input? Like, we need to know. So I think it's just really getting the right behavior. I don't know if you have any suggestions how you get the right behavior.
I mean, I'm always guilty of not keeping it clean myself, so I'm not quite sure.
Up cleaning it up, I notice things and put it in. I have override capabilities. So
for sure. One other thing is just the fact that you were hired 6 months, into this pandemic in a sales ops role. I'm curious what you think about most companies these days about kind of a renewed or maybe a new focus on sales ops, rev ops, marketing ops, those types of roles as a way to kind of help drive revenue for businesses. It feels like this is kind of the right time for a lot of businesses to be looking at it, and a lot of new roles like that are popping up. How do you feel like that's kind of shifted, especially over kind of this new COVID reality?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely become more prevalent, especially with all the RevOps companies that are moving out there. So there's all these technologies. So I think part of it is, sales leaders are getting bombarded in their inbox with all these new technologies to adopt to increase revenue ops, enable that process. So I think companies are looking now and saying, oh, wow, we're very overloaded in terms of our data. We don't have any time to digest this. What we saw at Akkadian mainly is our sales director was just overwhelmed with his to-do list and couldn't dedicate the time. And so it was just causing a slowdown on that. And so I also think that data is king and insights will help us. So understanding what is our, how many touches and to get to an actual phone call. So I definitely would say that I think it is a trend, like you said. And more
totally agree.
To embrace it. I don't know.
Yeah. So kind of digging a little deeper onto that, like marketing ops, sales ops, rev ops reality that's happening. How does it work in your organization? Is marketing a strong partner? Do you have you said you do a bunch of the marketing ops stuff, but there's the actual marketing team. Maybe focus in a little bit there.
Do a lot of marketing ops. I would say I'm partnering with them. I do a little bit of it. I mean, I'm still sales ops and sales enablement, but it's definitely a hybrid role. So yeah, partnering with our marketing director, really understanding our lead end-to-end cycle. So we don't have necessarily a great handle on that of terms of what is our conversion rate. So we recently have gotten Sugar Market as a tool to utilize to really track leads. So that has been helpful. So I would say, I think a good sales ops manager and leader partners with marketing to really understand that cycle, because that's, very important part of the funnel. And then in terms of rev ops, like I said, partnering with finance to understand where we're at in our, number for the quarter, really making sure that we're tight and understanding what's going on there. And then obviously I talk to my sales team every day. So I feel like I'm kind of this hub, and I have all these spokes that I have to make sure that I'm touching. So it's definitely, I would say, rev ops for anyone who likes to do a little bit of analysis, partner with fun salespeople who are way better than some accounting people I've worked with, a little bit more personality, and do all of that. I mean, I think, like I mentioned before, it's kind of a gifted generalist type role where you got to be able to figure it out and do a little bit of everything to really figure out where your priorities. And I think for each company, it's going to be different, right? We're small, our priorities are different. We're maybe at a very different phase of what our analytics are versus, some other companies. So sure. I think each company has to kind of look and evaluate a little bit differently.
Right. So you mentioned Sugar Market, so that's your marketing automation platform. Mm-hmm. It sounds like you guys are really doubling down on Sugar in terms of your go-to-market tech stack. Right. Is there a reason for that? Was that a strategic decision, or is it because Sugar CRM was there? It just made sense to do Sugar Market, or?
Exactly. It was because Sugar CRM was there. So part of my job that I've decided will be to continue to evaluate, like I said, our different technologies that we utilize. So, we have Yesware, Zoom Info, Sugar CRM, Sugar Market, just really understanding how much are we spending on it? What kind of value are we getting at it? So I've started creating a little bit of an ROI analysis. I mean, we do an automated dialer, we have that. So just really understanding how many tools do we have? What's the benefit of it? Because like I said, Sugar is not necessarily the most user-friendly. Salesforce, but and Salesforce is obviously the best in class is what people think of. Mm-hmm. But as you know, to overhaul all the technology that you're utilizing at an org is not an easy task. You don't do it overnight. You really have to think about it. So we just, decided to go with Sugar Market because it just made sense to get kind of a Band-Aid or something quicker without having to do a complete overhaul.
Right. And did you guys not have something in place before?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
We didn't have anything. And like I said, a lot of our reps are new, and we had just basically gotten them trained on Sugar CRM. So we're not, so a lot of times when I get emails and there looks like great demos from all these cool companies out there that are doing really great things in the RevOps space. It's just, we find they don't, integrate with Sugar, or it's just not the right time for us. I would love to have more streamlined capabilities for us to get insights, but that does require a lot. And so I'm always hesitant to necessarily get more technology for us when we already kind of have a long list going. I just want to make sure that we're not just making it longer.
Oh yeah, for sure. Listen, we're tech bloat, I guess, is common in a lot of companies. I think the latest number I said was the latest number I saw is most kind of small to medium-sized companies have somewhere between 150 and 160 pieces of technology in their company. And these are not big companies. We're talking about small and medium-sized companies. Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen the MarTech landscape, the famous kind of visual infographic. It's got 8,000 pieces of marketing technology on it. There's tons of tech out there. We happen to be a tech company. We happen to be kind of a platform that sits between marketing and sales. Right. But we're strong believers in purposeful technology, right? Tech by itself does not solve problems. You need strategy, you need process, you need people You need all of those things in place to extract maximum value from technology. At least that's my philosophy.
Oh, I agree 100%. And so I think that's why we're still at this phase of let's make sure we are extracting the maximum value we can out of what we already have in place. Because like I said, our focus is on selling and getting the deals and revenue. And so my job part of it I see is like building the infrastructure to support that process. And if we don't have to necessarily overhaul it to require all our reps to learn something new, which takes time away from selling when it's been a little bit more of a challenge right now, it's just maybe not the right time. Hopefully, as things start to pick up a little bit and we get it more in a groove, and maybe the vaccine will help. I don't know.
Yeah,
Eventually, that would be awesome. I saw Texas is open now, no mask mandate. So I'm joking we all should just go to Texas for an event.
They're like one of 14 states. It's like a growing trend, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So I don't know. Minnesota's fine. So I mean, obviously we have masks, but I don't know. It's just So I'm just hoping that I'm not, I guess, necessarily eager to introduce a bunch of new changes with technology right away, unless it does make sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And kind of this has led to a really good segue. We've talked a lot about a lot of stuff, right? We've talked about strategy staying kind of consistent, tactics shifting and adjusting to the COVID reality. We've talked about getting reps to follow process and make sure that they're in their CRM doing what they need to do. We've talked about tech stacks and kind of how to handle that. I guess the best way to sum this up, in my opinion, is given everything that we've talked about related to COVID, just related to business in general, 2021 has just started. I guess for most companies, they're wrapping up Q1 in a little bit. Do you have any predictions for 2021 in terms of the state of business, continuing impacts of COVID, big trends? When is the world getting back to normal? Is there a new normal? Like,
right.
What are your thoughts?
Yes, well, I mean, I definitely think there's going to be a new normal. I don't think anything's ever going to shift back to the way it was. I think the biggest prediction that I would say is, talking about the work from home space, I think a hybrid world will continue to exist where some people will be remote and others will have the option to go into an office. I think we've seen that. I mean, humans are social beings, right? I am an extrovert. I need people. I like interaction where our team is. So I think that will be a change where people will actually maybe crave going into the office. But I think the way in which the office is set up, the way in which people work will be different. I don't know how necessarily. Big companies will probably be different, look different. Small companies will. And I think another big continued trend that we'll be able to see is that you can hire talent from wherever, and it doesn't matter. For example, my role, if it wasn't the pandemic, I probably wouldn't have been hired because I wanted to work remote from my home in Minnesota, where all my friends and family are. I wasn't willing to move to New York. But in the remote world, we can take talent from everywhere. And I think a lot of companies are starting to do this. So I think those are the two biggest trends that I've seen. And when we'll go back to normal, I don't know. I mean, the world has been crazy. So I'm hoping that, the economy, I think, will start to pick up a little bit more with, restaurants being able to be more open and that sort of thing. But those would be my two biggest predictions for 2021.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the increased openness to remote and sourcing talent as opposed to proximity. Like, I think that's definitely, I think that was something that was coming anyways, and COVID just accelerated it, if I said that correctly. But, I think like most things in life, like the pendulum swings hard in one direction and then it eventually kind of swings back a little bit. We were talking about the benefits of like sitting in the same space, turning around, having a quick chat, or jumping in a war room and working things out. I think there'll be some kind of balance between the two things, right? maybe the airline industry will rebound with all of the quarterly travel that's going to be happening to get teams together once a quarter or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we definitely agree with sourcing talent. Like our Breadcrumbs is a completely distributed team. There's myself and 2 other people here in Canada. We have a few people in the US, a few people in Italy, a few people in Germany. We're all over the place. And thanks to technology, we're able to talk on a regular basis. We're able to be on the same page. Certainly it would be nice to, have a happy hour and celebrate wins together.
Totally.
Right. Every once in a while.
Oh my gosh. I know.
What's that?
I know. I mean, that's something our company, so, it was a big culture of go out after, we'll have our quarterly company meeting and everyone goes out in New York and has a lot of fun. Right. So what we're doing now every other Friday is, if you can make it 4 p.m. Eastern, we have some sort of gathering where we do something. So this week I was dubbed by our president. Apparently I'm the most fun to be head of this crew. And so that has also been something we've instituted. I think a lot of companies have as well, but we don't want to force fun, but we're going to have a little bit of happy hour. And this week, apparently the team decided they want to play charades. So I'll let you know, keep you posted on how virtual.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about it. I participated in a couple of those things as well. Yeah. With real life friends, with work friends, it's a great stopgap. It's not the same as being together, right? And happy hour doesn't necessarily mean cocktails. It could be, ice water for all I care. But it's just being together in the same space, and hopefully we'll get there. Hopefully we'll get there at some point. But
I think we will. One of the goals, I think we'll get there. I agree. We'll get there. I need to get to New York to meet the team in person. So.
For sure. New York's one of my favorite places, so maybe we'll cross paths there one time.
That would be great.
Yeah, it's only an hour from Toronto on so it's amazing.
Yeah.
Esti, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been a fun conversation. Everyone, it was Esti Zimmerman from Akkadian Labs. If you're looking for a solution around unified communications and you're trying to optimize your remote working situation, consider giving them a look. Otherwise, thank you everyone for joining. Joe, thanks for being on the call again, and looking forward to the next conversation. Take care.
Thanks for watching the full episode. Make sure you subscribe to social media links below. For more detailed info about what we do, take a look at breadcrumbs.io.